What is up, guys? Welcome to episode number 159 of Beef's Beef. I have another great interview for you guys. Sorry, it's been a little bit since I recorded last. But before we get into who we have coming on for an interview today, I got to talk about my sponsors. First sponsor is Crystal Lackey at Stockton Mortgage. First and foremost, I'm going to congratulate them again on their newborn son. Beautiful child. Congratulations. But Crystal Lackey at Stockton Mortgage, hit her up for all your home loan needs, refinancing, mortgage, anything like that. Hit her up at 502-615-0743. Again, it's Crystal Lackey, Stockton Mortgage, 502-615-0743. Stockton Mortgage is an equal housing lender, MLS number 8259. Crystal Lackey, MLS number 1735979. And my next sponsor, of course, is Delium Clothing. You see the shirt here? Boom. Delium Clothing, spelled Bedilliom. Again, it's Delium Clothing on Facebook, at Delium Clothing on Instagram. My guy Isaac has this thing rolling. He recently opened his own, or he's in his own building now. So that's exciting. Again, it's pronounced Delium. Delium is a men's and women's minimalistic brand that focuses on modern aesthetic and quality. Everything comes pre-shrunk and ready to wear. He has a men's line at Him's Gentleman Boutique in downtown New Albany. So make sure you hit them up, Delium Clothing on Facebook. Make sure you give them a follow, and at Delium Clothing on Instagram. Today's guest is a well-traveled guest. Has coached in the college ranks, has coached in the pro ranks. Was the Mr. Basketball for the state of Kentucky in 1983. He was a Parade All-American, a McDonald's All-American. He shared the MVP of the 1983 McDonald's All-American game. He played for the University of Kentucky, where he played for 4 seasons. Played for Coach Hall and for Coach Sutton. Played in the NBA for the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Miami Heat, and coached as an assistant under Coach Pitino at Kentucky. Coached under him at the Boston Celtics, as well as being a head coach at Kentucky State and Mid-Continent Universities. So today's guest, if you haven't figured it out from that, is Mr. Winston Bennett. I'm excited to get him on here and talk about his experiences in basketball and the such, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Without further ado, Winston Bennett. Hey, Winston, I appreciate you joining me tonight.
Man, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
I know you're a busy guy, so we'll get right to the episode. So, you being born in Louisville, Kentucky, who kind of got you into basketball, or what kind of got you into basketball?
Yeah, man, it was my father. My father was a big man, 6'5", probably 500 pounds, just a colossal guy. What was like a little teddy bear if you ever met him. He never met a stranger. He was just a phenomenal guy. But he got me into it. He bought me a Nerf basketball hoop, which I, of course, the kind with the suction cups on the end, stuck them on my mirror in my room. And I started to pretend that I was because back then we had the ABA. Dr. J was with the Nets. Of course, you had the Kentucky Colonels with Artis Gilmore, Dennis, with that bunch. So I would pretend I was all of these teams. And I'd let the clock run down to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I would always be the doctor, and I finger roll it in at the end, or the Iceman, George Gervin. So, yeah, great times, man. But that was my initiation into basketball, pretty much.
So you went to Male High School, where you amassed over 2,100 points. You won Mr. Basketball, and you were named to the McDonald's All-American team. But as proud as that stuff as you were, would you trade all of that stuff to win a state title during your time at Male?
Man, there's not much I remember, but I do remember my last game at Male being defeated in the regional finals by the Ballard Bruins, John White, Adam Cheek, Terry Stewart. Man, I'll never outlive that game. Yeah, so yes, I would trade it all in just for an opportunity, not only to win a championship, but to get the chance to win a championship, just to go to Rupp. My 4 years in high school, we never made it to Rupp. My senior year was our best opportunity to do that.
So at your time in high school, were they just strictly at Rupp? Because I know back in the earlier days of the Sweet 16, they rotated it, right, between Freedom Hall
Yeah,
and Freedom?
yeah. Yeah, as far as I remember, during my tenure there, it was just at Rupp. Now, I think when you go before that and you start getting in Griff's time and some of the other guys, Wesley Cox and those guys, it may have been at Freedom Hall and may have rotated a little bit.
So how great of a feeling, I gotta ask this because I've never had someone on that has done this. How great of a feeling was it, even if it was a co-MVP, to win the MVP of the McDonald's All-American game?
It was awesome. It was awesome. I didn't think a whole lot about it in terms of the significance of it, because my ideal in playing the game was to give it all I had every time that I stepped in between the lines. I wasn't the most athletic player. I wasn't the most skilled player, but I was going to give you what I had. And during that year, you had Pearl Washington, who later went to Syracuse, just a dynamic guard out of New York. You had so many great players, Kenny Smith, that you see on, TNT, some of the broadcasts with Barkley. And, a lot of those guys were in that particular game. So to have that opportunity was certainly, certainly humbled by it.
So I heard a story about you, and I've always wondered if it was true. I heard that you changed your mind on where you were going to college at the table, and you chose to go to Kentucky. Is that a true story? And can you give the reasoning behind it,
No,
if it
not a
is?
true story. Not a true story. I don't know if you've had this guy on your show, but if you haven't, you need to get him. And that's Robbie Valentine. He tells the best story of my going to Kentucky that I've heard. Now, obviously, he embellishes it and put in some parts that he established himself, but it was a great story. And here's how he tells it. He was my guy that took me around when I was on a visit to Louisville, right here in town, born and raised. So, we went to a party, one night. And then when he brought me back to the dorm room, he brought me back. Everything was kosher. The next morning, he had a meeting with Coach Crum. And Coach Crum said, Robbie, where's Winston? And, Robbie tells a story that Coach Crum put a spotlight on him and like he's, being interrogated. But he says, man, Coach, I saw a big blue van drive up at about 3 or 4 in the morning. Whisk Winston off to Lexington, man, and I ain't seen him since. Well, he tells it much better than what I just told him, man. He's a great storyteller, but it didn't happen like that. Certainly, I grew up as a Louisville fan. My mentor and great friend is Doug Griffin. Um, he was the first guy I've seen do a 360 in high school, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to go to Male. The other reason was my mother was forcing me to go to Male because it was a traditional school, and the school I was supposed to go to was not.
What other school
She
were you thinking about going to?
Well, my district was Butler, either Butler or Western, which I would have been fine with. But my mother, she was a person that was a stickler for education and books, which is probably why I've got a few degrees that I probably wouldn't have had for her if it had not been for her. But yeah, so that's how I ended up at Male. I wanted to follow in the shoes of Griff. Certainly I was nothing like him in terms of how he played. One, I didn't have a 48-inch vertical. Two, I didn't shoot rainbow threes. But if you want to know who I was kind of like, and who I did try to pattern my game out more so, because I knew I couldn't be Griff. I felt like I could be Bobby Turner. That was Griff's sidekick at Mill. And not a lot is said about Bobby, but Bobby was a heck of a player, great rebounder. He was getting 3-point plays before the 3-point line came out.
Yeah.
He would get offensive rebounds, get you in the air, go into you, make the basket, and then go to the free throw line.
I've heard that name a lot. My dad talks a lot about greats that came out of the Male pipeline to Louisville or even to Kentucky, like yourself. So I've heard the name Bobby Turner, and I've heard great things about Bobby Turner from my dad.
Tremendous, tremendous guy, man. Tremendous.
So what went into your decision to go to the University of Kentucky? Like, because you said you grew up a Louisville fan, you obviously went on a visit. What was it about Kentucky that stuck out that made you pick the Wildcats?
You may not believe this, but the number one thing was I wanted to get away from home, but not too far away from home. It wasn't necessarily the facilities. And of course, they had the Taj Mahal called the Wildcat Lodge, which was impressive within itself. And if you didn't like that, all you had to do was go downtown to Rupp Arena that seats 23,000 plus fans. That's impressive. But the number one thing for me was I just needed to get away from home. I'm an only child, wanted to see another part of the state, if you will, or someplace other than Louisville. And it was going to be great roots for my growth as a person.
So you played for a former guest of mine, Coach Hall.
Oh
Fantastic
yeah,
person. I
yeah,
love Coach Hall. Like I told you before, and you see the flag behind me. I'm a Louisville fan, but that
yeah,
guy is one of the most I don't even cordial and nice people I've ever met in my life.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
He is. He really is.
so coming from Mayo, how difficult were his practices compared to what you were used to in high school?
I think once you get on the collegiate level, playing in the SEC, the Metro Conference, which is where Louisville, I think, was at that time, any of those top conferences, the practices are going to be exponentially harder, as his was. Even though we had a Final Four team in Bowie, Turpin, Kenny Skywalker, uh, Dickie Bill, all those guys that we ended up going to the Final Four in our first year, the practices were, tremendous. Some of our practices were as good as any game we played in. They were that competitive.
So you played U of L your first season there. How excited were you to know, or when you found out that Louisville was on the schedule the first years you were playing?
Oh man, come on, man. That was like a guy going to Kings Island. That was the ultimate. Being from Louisville and then having a chance to play those guys. Those are guys that I grew up with, guys that I played against in high school. Superb Herbert Crook played at Eastern. Big Felton Spencer, Chris West played at Manual. I mean, I played against a lot of those guys in the summer, and of course, we played against each other in high school. So that was a tremendous honor, man. I was tremendously
Because
excited.
that rivalry didn't start back until after the tournament game the year before, correct? The dream game.
Right, right. You had the dream game before that, and I think Louisville won that, right? I
Yes, they
don't
won it
know.
in overtime.
Yeah, yeah, because they had Milton, some of those guys, man. They were just unbelievable, man. You know, my love of Louisville dates back, as I said, to Griff when they were known as Doctors of Dunk. Even before that, they had guys like Alan Murphy and Ricky Gallen. You're not gonna know these guys, but
I told you, my dad's told me about all these guys.
oh,
So
okay, okay. So
yeah,
you do know 'em.
I don't I wouldn't know everything about them, but trust me,
Yeah,
my
you've
dad is.
heard the names.
I've heard the names for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Junior Bridgman, I'm sure you heard of him.
yeah.
Very successful off the court as he has been on the court. So, I love those teams, man. And um, to a lot of people, it was surprised when I didn't go there. But as I date back to what I said earlier, I needed to grow up. Lexington was only 75 miles away. My mother and father could still come to the games. And let's face it, man, they had some of the best facilities, man, in the nation. At that time, the Wildcat Lodge, nobody had anything that can compare with it. We had antique beds, big screen TVs in our room. I mean, man, I'm from the west end of Louisville. I ain't seen nothing like this. So that was impressive, man.
So I didn't put this on there, but you saying that, I got to ask, did you get any backlash for going to Kentucky from
Oh
friends or
yeah, of
family?
course, of course. I was the Benedict Arnold, of course. Matter of fact, my father, in his boldness, bless his heart, he's passed away. But he would ride around in a big blue truck with a Wildcat on the side of the truck. I mean, he would get all kind of heat, but he didn't care. He was proud of his son and just wanted to support him whether he went to Louisville or Kentucky. You said you're a Louisville fan. I'm a huge Louisville fan. It's just that I'm a Louisville fan that happened to play for Kentucky.
That's so you cheer for Louisville now?
Yeah, my daughter went to Louisville. My daughter played for Louisville, played for the volleyball team there. I mean, nothing changes, man. I'm a hometown boy. I'm a Louisville Cardinal to the day I die, but I'm also a Wildcat fan to the day I die because I spent a lot of blood, sweat, and tears on that Rupp Arena court.
So if they play, who do you cheer for?
Kentucky, of course.
Okay,
That's where my
that's.
blood, sweat, and tears
I
are.
guess that's fair. That's fair. So what
Yeah.
do you remember about that first game when you guys played U of L? Because it was
Not
in
much.
Ripley. Not much.
Not much. Did we win? I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, the years have
you
passed,
all
man.
won big in your first game.
Okay. Um, all I know was how excited I was to be a part of that rivalry. I mean, think about it. A little kid grows up in Louisville, Kentucky with a dream to one, go to college. Nobody in my family ever graduated from college on either side of my family, mother or father's side. So I was the first to do that. So I honor God for that. But then to play big time basketball at Kentucky,
Yeah.
even if it was Louisville, I couldn't have, what kind of went wrong with either one of those decisions? I couldn't have.
Yeah.
So, and here's the other thing, some of my guys will tease me. Yeah, you went to Kentucky, but we won a championship in '86 while you was at Kentucky. So I said, yeah, you're right. I can't argue that.
So not only did you play U of L in your first game, but you played IU and then you played Kansas to start your college career. That's your first 3 games. That's insane to even think about.
Man,
So,
that is insane.
so the first question how awesome was it to beat IU? Because not only was Louisville and Kentucky fantastic teams in the 80s, Kentucky has been going back to the 40s or whatever, and Louisville, really some people consider the team of the 80s, but IU was not far behind Louisville in the 80s either. So how cool was it to not only beat IU, but then to go to Fog Allen and beat Kansas on the road?
Man, let me tell you what was cool about it. Bobby Knight came to my house to recruit me. And this guy's walking up in the West End, walking over up in our house. We just had just a little house. He walks in, man. He talks to me, fully expecting me to go to Indiana for some reason. I don't know, I don't know why, but and so when I told him, Coach, look, man, I'm not interested. He like, are you serious? You not coming? I'm serious, Coach. I mean, this guy had a different type of attitude, man. He was on another level. I just couldn't see myself playing for him, but it was cool to play against his teams. And one of the things you knew, if you played against a Bobby Knight team, one, you knew they was going to be hard nosed, they was going to pick you to death, and you was going to feel them out there on that court because they was going to hit you.
So looking at your all schedule, did you all really have a game with a 21 or 24-11 final?
Man, I don't remember that. I don't know where that came from. No, I don't remember that.
Because I looked on there and it said that you all had played Cincinnati, and the final score you all won 24-11, and they went 4 corners against you all.
Man, I can't speak to that. I can barely remember yesterday. I surely can't remember that.
So you all started your freshman year out 12-0 with wins over 3 different ranked teams. Do you? I'm going to go ahead and guess you're going to say no, but do you remember who your first loss was in your freshman year?
I have no idea.
It was against Auburn, and something that I noticed in your entire career when you were at Kentucky is Auburn, for some reason, always gave you guys a tough game. And at first, I couldn't think of why, but then I thought, well, most of the time Charles Barkley was there. For a good amount of times, right. It was there. So,
and most people would tell you that they thought that Charles Barkley had our big men intimidated.
Yeah.
I can't say that was true, but that's what most people who are Kentucky fans would say. I do remember, though, I think it was that freshman year that we got the best of Barkley in one of the finals. I can't remember if it was the SEC tournament or, I think it was. It was the SEC tournament, played them at Vanderbilt. We beat them, and Barkley was crying at midcourt. So that was a huge win for us.
Looking at your all schedule from that year, you all played a lot of great teams. Who would you say was the best team you all played that year?
Man. I would have to say the team that beat us in the Final Four, and that's Georgetown. Like you said, there was a lot of great teams. We played Illinois that year. We played Georgetown that year. We played Houston that year. Had Akeem Olajuwon and 5 Slammer Jammer. So I could name any one of those teams. But I'll go with the team that beat us in the Final Four, and that was Georgetown. Ironically, that was one of the 3 visits that I took was to Georgetown coming out of high school.
And what were the other 2, Louisville and Kentucky?
Louisville and Kentucky.
So you all rolled through your first season to the tournament with a 26-4 record. You all played BYU for the second time, which led to a matchup with Louisville again in the NCAA tournament. What do you think you all had that made you all such a tough matchup for Louisville because you all beat them handily again?
We had the Twin Towers. We had 7 foot Sam Boyd. We had 6'11" Melvin Turpin. That's that was the difference. Louisville has always been a running, pressing team. Way before Patino even came to Louisville, Coach Crum would institute a zone press. So they was very, very effective, and they was always ultra athletic. Ultra athletic, man. When you talk about the McCray brothers, Rodney, Scooter was 6'9", 6'10", and I think Coach Crum even tried him at the point. That's how versatile he was before he had some knee injuries and that. Then you look at Wiley Brown, good friend of mine, left-handed, strong, great around the rim, could do a multiplicity of things. Then you had great point guards. I mean, they had it all. Superb Herb, that
Yeah.
medium range soft jump shot, great offensive rebounder. I mean, they just had a phenomenal team. But I think our two big people, Bowie and Turpin, was probably the difference.
So, you all beat Louisville again, and then you all beat Illinois, and that set up the matchup that you were talking about with Georgetown, uh, which you guys eventually lost. What gave you guys so much trouble? Obviously, they had Patrick Ewing, who is one of the best players in college basketball and one of the best players in college basketball history. But outside of him, I mean, because you all had two great 7-footers, what
Right.
gave you guys so much trouble with that team?
Us, we gave ourselves so much trouble at the end of the day. And that's not to take anything away from the greatness of the great John Thompson and his coaching. Phenomenal coach, phenomenal team with Ewing and Wingate and Reggie Williams. I mean, they just had a heck of a team. Michael Graham. They were the intimidators. I don't feel like we were intimidated, but they had been known to intimidate other teams. As a matter of fact, as far as my memory goes, I think we may have been up a little at the half, but then we came out the second half, and couldn't throw it in the ocean. That's what I mean by it was our own self-infliction. We couldn't shoot the ball. We couldn't throw it in.
So, your sophomore year started off totally different from your freshman year. Um, I mean, what happened that made you guys stumble coming out of the gate? Was it the loss of the two 7-footers, and you guys kind of had to get used to playing without those two guys, or what was it you would say that made you guys stumble coming out of the gate of your sophomore season?
Man, when you take lottery pick 7 footers off your team and the type of point production, block shots, rebounds that they employ, and then you replace them with me or Kenny Skywalker, who was phenomenal. But I was no Bowie or Turpin. He was no Bowie or Turpin, even though he was phenomenal at what he did. He led us. He put us on his shoulders pretty much that year and took us all the way until we played St. John's, I think it was. But that was the difference. Those guys were phenomenal, and you didn't know how phenomenal they were because it wasn't always in their point production. It was their presence. You
Yeah,
put two 7 footers out there on the court, man, if they put their arms up, you're gonna have a terrible time shooting over
yeah.
them. So if you take them out, send them to the NBA and don't replace them with 7 footers, not that you can't be successful. We were successful, just not as successful.
So I have to ask a quick question. Taking all bias out of it, if Sam Bowie didn't battle with those injuries, do you think that he would have been an all-time great, close to Hakeem?
No question. No question. Um, Sam was one of the first, and there may have been others, but that had the dexterity to step out on the floor and shoot the ball. He could not only play inside, but he could step out and shoot the ball. He was a phenomenal passer. He's a guy that could have averaged a triple double because he could also handle the ball. I'm trying to think who I might would compare him to today. Um, I don't know who
Maybe
would
like a
come to
Kevin
mind.
Garnett, I guess.
Maybe a Kevin Garnett or even a what's the guy with the Nets? He don't he could shoot threes, but we didn't have a 3 point line back then. Durant,
Oh, Kevin
like a
Durant.
Durant, he could handle, he could shoot, he could pass, but he was over 7. He was 7'1".
Yeah.
He was just unbelievable. So if he hadn't had those femur injuries, oh my gosh, Jordan, man, I know Jordan ended up, Bowie was taken before Jordan, and Jordan ended up being the creme de la creme. But Bowie would have been, man, extraordinary if he hadn't had those injuries.
Yeah. So your sophomore year, you guys played in Freedom Hall. Do you remember what that atmosphere was like when you came back and played in Freedom Hall for the first time?
Man, I don't. I don't. I remember one of those years that, I was out with a knee injury. I don't believe it was my sophomore year, but whatever year it was when King Rex took over the game. And I think it was at Freedom Hall that he did it. He put us on his back and scored a bunch of points. I don't know if it was that. I think it was
That
later
would
on
have
in
been
my tenure.
your regular senior year, the year you redshirted.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It would have been, yeah, absolutely. But no, man, I don't remember it so much. That may have been the game where I think Cedric Jenkins tipped in a to win the game or give us an opportunity to win it. But again, the only thing I remember about those games was just how excited I was to play against some of the cats I played against in high school. And it was Louisville, man. It was
I just
Louisville.
wondered if any people, heckled you from the crowd because of your decision and the fact that you played for Kentucky and you were the rival. I didn't know if you caught any flack from the stands or anything like that.
Once you're in the game, you don't hear the noise.
Yeah.
If you're a player, a real player, you don't hear that noise. Maybe if you're at the free throw line, you may hear it. But when you're playing and running up and down and you focused on what you need to do defensively and offensively, all that other stuff goes out the window.
Oh yeah. So after that Louisville game, you guys won 6 straight games. What woke you guys up in that after that Louisville game that led you guys to win 6 straight games?
I think every game is a classroom. You watch the film of past mistakes the same way in life. Whatever mistakes you make, you try to rehearse, you go back, you watch the film, you say, oh man, I don't need to do that no more. It's the same way. You watching game after game film of where you made mistakes or defensive breakdowns or turnovers, and you try to eliminate those. And that's how most teams get better over the course of the year. Calipari's teams usually get better over the course of the year. Not this year, but usually.
So you guys entered the tournament with a 16-12 record, a lot different from the season before, but you won your first 2 games and you played a loaded St. John's team with the likes of Chris Mullen, Bill Winnington, Walter Berry, and a young Mark Jackson. They beat you all pretty good. Like, who was the toughest player that you had that you guys had to guard in that game? Would it have been Chris Mullen?
It could have been Chris Mullen. It could have been Walter Berry. It could have been any number of those guys, but those 2 guys, primarily. And then you had Mark Jackson, a perennial, guard.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been any one of them. But here's the issue that happened in that game. I think it was either the first half or the beginning of the second half. One of their players pokes Kenny Walker in the eye and scars his retina. He couldn't play the rest of the game. That was it. I mean, he was our guy. He was Superman to us. Once he went out, man, there went our chances.
So after your sophomore season, Coach Hall retired. Did you ever think about entering your name in the draft or maybe transferring or anything, or was it, hey, I'm gonna your intentions were to come back the entire time?
Yeah, in terms of the draft, there wasn't a whole lot of people coming out early back during those days. That was a different time period. First off, I don't think I was good enough to come out, after my sophomore period. I still had to get better with my jump shot because I had mostly played inside my whole high school career. Started to make the adjustment of playing out on the floor in my college career. In terms of transferring, I can't remember if I thought about transferring once Coach Hall retired. There wouldn't have been anywhere that I would have went except for Louisville or Georgetown. But no, my whole plan was to stay the course.
So, what did you work on, if you can think back to them? What did you work on the most coming from your sophomore to junior year? Because not only do you have a different coach, it's probably a different style. So there's different things that you maybe had to work on going into your junior season. Do you remember what you kind of honed your mindset in on this is the thing that I need to work on the most?
Yeah, every year for me was working on ball handling and my medium range jump shot because, as I mentioned, I mostly played back to the basket in high school. If you're 6'7" and above in high school, you pretty much gonna play inside. And that I did. There were a few players that I played against. Another guy that I didn't mention, and that's Tony Kimbrough, played for those Louisville teams. That's a guy that was my same height, but he was so skilled. He could handle the ball. He could shoot the ball. Big hands, long arms, just phenomenal. So to answer your question, ball handling and shooting are one of the things that I concentrated on.
And that's something that kids today can still work on. It's funny because you mentioned the mid-range jump shot, and I actually was just speaking with someone about this the other day. The mid-range jump shot is becoming, I feel like it's become a lost art in the last 10 years anyway. But if
Yeah,
you look at the game, the best players in the game are the ones that hit that mid-range jump shot.
yeah,
You look at your guys like LeBron, your Kevin Durant, your Kawhi Leonards, even your Joel Embiids, and players like that. They're all great mid-range jump shooters. You
yeah,
still have great 3-point shooters, and I feel like that's where people think the game is headed. But at the end of the day, if you can't hit a jump shot in the mid range, it's not going to help you out.
yeah. And it is unfortunate because it's a shot that every player can work on and become effective at. And you hit the nail on the head. Players today are either a great 3-point shooter or they're a guy that slashes to the basket and gets all the way to the rim. And there's no in between where you're able to come to a 2-foot stop, go up, and knock down the in between shot. One thing I don't like is all these runners. These guys throwing up runners in the lane. You have some guys that are effective at doing it, but overall, that's a tough shot to hit. Not only that, it puts your charge call on you. You jumping off of
Absolutely.
1 foot, all the guy has to do is move in and take a charge. Where if you come in there, come hard, and then pull up on a dime
Yeah.
to make the shot and not get.
So you all had a big win over Louisville again in the 85-86 season. How did it feel to beat Louisville, knowing that they were going? Or I mean, I guess you didn't know at the time, but knowing that they won the '86 championship.
Man, first of all, man, it sounds good to hear you say we beat Louisville all these times. Man, I need to
It's
bottle that up.
I
Make
can't
sure.
lie to you, man. Writing these questions, it was tough to write all these questions
I
because
bet it was. I bet you didn't
I
like that
said,
at all.
man, he kind of owned us a little bit when he was there. I don't like writing all these
Man,
questions.
man, it's awesome. It's awesome. Make sure when you have some of them little Louisville guys on that you bring that up too. Uh, I'm sorry. What was your question, man? I
So
kind of
how
got
did it
off the
feel
answer.
to? I mean, obviously you never like losing earlier in the tournament, which we'll get to that here in a second. But my question is how did it feel after the season, knowing that you all had beaten the eventual national champions?
Oh man, wow! It was unbelievable in terms of course, when you're playing them, you have no idea that they're going to be the eventual national champions.
Yeah,
We knew that they had the makeup to be that because of the players that they had, Milt, Never Nervous, Purvis, and some of the other guys that they had on the team, Herb. So we knew they had the makeup. Billy Thompson, I can't remember if Billy was on that team or not, but uh, man, it was gratifying to know that you beat the champion.
yeah.
I mean, that song rings in your hands. We are the champions. They were the champions. So, to beat them before they became champions was quite a feat.
So how? I mean, obviously it's always disappointing to lose in the NCAA tournament before at any time.
Yeah.
But how disappointed were you all when you lost to the 11 seed at LSU, knowing one that you had already beaten them 3 times that season? And not only that, but it kept you guys from a matchup in the Final Four against the Louisville team that you all had already beaten earlier in the season.
Man, we was licking our chops. I mean,
Yeah,
we was looking past them to Louisville. I
yeah.
mean, that's what we wanted. And it's unfortunate because, like you say, we had beaten them. What was it, three times
You all had beaten
before?
them 3 times already. Yeah,
Man, that's crazy. That's crazy. And you know that, and you always know in the back of your mind too. One, it's difficult to beat a team 3 times in a row. We had did it, and then Jose Vargas and those guys, Ricky Blanton, I think his name was. I mean, man, they shouldn't have beat us. No way, no how. But that's basketball. That's why you throw up the ball, you jump ball, and you play the game. It's like horse racing. That's
yeah,
why you race. No
yeah.
matter how fast that horse is, it can get beat on any given day. Same way in basketball.
So after that season, you had spoken on it earlier. You decided to redshirt to rehab an injury. What was the injury that you had that kept you out for what would have been your senior season?
Yeah, man, I was in practice one morning. No, yeah, one day. Of course, Eddie Sutton's the coach now, and we're going up and down. And one of my teammates, Ed Davender, from Brooklyn, New York, comes down. He's through the legs, behind his back, driving the ball. And then, of course, I could hear in my mind Dick Vitale say, "Man, Bennett, he's a glass cleaner. He's the Windex man." And that's what I did. I went up to clean the glass and grab the rebound. And when I did, I turned around. One of my teammates fell in the side of my leg, turned my ACL.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. So, it was tragic. I remember Eddie Sutton coming over, Coach Sutton coming over, and, because I wanted to continue to practice. Coach, I think I can go ahead and practice. No, man, we're going to get you checked out. And when they got me checked out, I tore my ACL.
So how tough of a decision was it to sit out that entire season and have to watch from the sideline?
It was tough. The decision wasn't tough. The decision was already made for me because back during then, it takes you a year to come back from that injury. So from that standpoint, the decision was made, but it was tough in that I had to sit out and what was to be my senior year.
Yeah.
And it was the year that Kenny was gone now. I moved into a leadership role. Of course, Rex was there. He was the man,
Yeah.
but I was going to be by his side. Ed Davender was there. James Blackman was there. So we had a nice core. Richard Madison, who played all sports. He was just a tremendous athlete. Uh, so we had great personnel, but it was tough.
So the next season, your season started off with a bang again. You guys started out 10-0 with your first loss coming to Auburn, which is like I
Mm,
said, it seemed like you guys always had tough games with them.
yeah.
What did they do? I mean, I know earlier in the earlier years you said they had Barkley. What did they do that gave you all fits? Because it felt like every time you all played them, you all had close games.
Well, number one, Auburn has always had great talent. Not only Barkley, but you got to look at Chuck Persons.
Yeah,
And there's a couple other guys whose names escape me. I can see them and can't call their name right now. Oh, Morris. I can't remember Morris's first name, but he was long and athletic, just a tremendous player. And they had other guys. So they always had great talent. I don't know. I assume that loss came at Auburn and not in Rupp Arena, but I don't know that for sure. Anytime you go on the road, anywhere, but particularly in the SEC, there's no guarantee that you're going to be the winner at the end of that game.
so you all had another great season. You winning the SEC tournament, and you went to the NCAA tournament with only 5 losses. Your all's first round matchup at the time, a lot of regular fans probably wouldn't have realized that that team had two NBA guys that stayed in the NBA for a while. Uh, they were a high powered offense. You guys played Southern in the first round with
Mm,
guys like Avery Johnson and Bobby Fields, which some people
wow.
may know Bobby Fields. I don't know. He passed away tragically early on. But what did you guys do to hold such a high powered offense, 12 points under their season average?
Well, defense, first of all, was our calling card. Eddie Sutton was a defensive coach. So the way we pressured, the way that we try to um, make teams go sideline, baseline, and then trap the baseline, instituting some pressing types of things that we do during the course of the game. So I'm sure that affected them some. Getting back to Bobby Fields and Avery Johnson and those guys. Bobby Fields and I played together with the Cleveland Cavaliers for a
Yeah.
while too. So I got to know him personally. What a tremendous person he was.
Yeah, so the next round you guys beat Maryland, which led to the team that eventually beat you guys in Villanova. Looking at that Villanova team, they were so well balanced as far as their point differential with their players, and especially in that game that you guys lost. Um, did you guys maybe overlook them? Because I felt like overall you all had more talent. It just seemed like they maybe spread it out more. But what do you think beat you guys in that game against Villanova?
Gets back to the horse analogy that I just gave you.
Yeah,
There's no shoe-ins in any game. Even though you got the most talent, does not mean that you're going to play the best on that given night. and it was one of our off nights, and unfortunately, it came at a time, at a very destructive time where we could have led on and did some extraordinary things in the tournament. So
Mhm.
it was very unfortunate, but that was the great Rolly Massimino, who was the coach of that team, I
Yeah.
believe. Great coach, always put together great teams that took on the persona of him. Hard nosed, get down and dirty, fight for every loose ball, fight for every rebound. Just a hard nosed crew. Reminds me a lot of the Villanova teams and Jay Wright coach teams.
Yeah.
They're not the most talented, but man, they're gonna give you everything they got.
So that was your last game in a UK uniform. I want you to kind of explain the feeling of yourself being in the locker room, taking that jersey off for the last time and knowing everything that you had gone through in your career, two different coaches, a knee injury. And at that time, coming back for a knee injury at that time was not like it is now. It,
Right.
it was a lot more difficult. So kind of explain that feeling of knowing that your career as a Kentucky Wildcat was over.
I think the knee injury epitomizes the career. And what I mean by that is oftentimes in life, we have scars that we grow from, that we try to mature from, and everybody has them. And oftentimes, even though the scars heal, you see the residue of the scar. I still have the zipper because that's what they used to do, the zipper on the knee where they split you open down the middle and on the side. I still have that scar, even though I'm healed from that injury. Now, of course, I've got the residue of having a knee injury that I have to live with the rest of my life. But it's devastating, but it's a small microcosm of life. You got to
Yeah.
live through the pains and anguish, whether you caused them or whether they're haphazard things that happen to you throughout the course of life. You got to learn from them, grow from them, but you certainly can't stop. And you certainly can't give up. You got to keep going. You got to keep
Abs-
getting up.
Absolutely. So when you entered the draft, did they have an NBA combine like they do now, or how did they scout you guys, or was it just like, hey, you got scouted during the season?
No, they had combines back then. I remember going to the combine in Chicago at Moody Bible Institute, I think is where they held it, downtown Chicago. Then they had another one in Orlando, Florida. The one in Orlando, I was injured. I had strained my hamstring injury, hamstring, if I remember correctly. So I wasn't able to participate in that one. I went down there and then did that. Then I was out early.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then of course, like you said, they scout you all throughout, your years as a collegiate athlete. Most athletes were playing all 4 years back then. You
Yeah.
had the extraordinary people like Michael Jordan and those guys who may have come out early, but there wasn't as many as what we see today.
So the NBA draft was different in a lot of aspects, but especially because they had more than 2 rounds like they do now.
Oh yeah, yeah,
They
yeah,
hit up somewhere upwards 6, 7, or eight rounds back in the day,
yeah.
right?
I was going to say about 6 rounds back then. I happened to be drafted in the third round, and and while I was thankful to be drafted, I was at the same time I was devastated. And here's the thing for young people coming out and wanting to be an NBA ball player, you can't get mixed up into what media is saying about you or what combine people are saying about you as to when you're going to come out. Because if you get all enthralled into that and then you don't come out, when you think you should, then you're going to be devastated.
Yeah.
And no matter when you come out, you got to go up there and prove yourself. So I don't care if you're a first round draft pick or a second round, you still got to go in there and you got to make hay while the sun is shining, which means you got to prove yourself every day.
So that was kind of, I guess you would say, a bittersweet moment because you were happy to be drafted, but you felt like you should have been drafted higher.
Well, absolutely. But I knew also the thing that kept me from being drafted early was the fact that I had the ACL injury.
Yeah.
Most teams don't want to take on damaged goods right out of the gate.
Yeah.
They want somebody that's ready made, someone that's healthy, been proven healthy over the long haul, but not someone who's had an ACL injury. You're taking a chance in that case. Someone's putting their money on you in
Yeah.
hopes that you can, get the job done.
So what did Cleveland tell you when they took you? Did they make any promises about you making the team or anything? Or is it just like, hey,
No,
you're gonna have to come here, work your tail off. If you make the team, you make the team.
yeah, there was no promises made. They were in the driver's seat because they owned my rights.
Yeah.
Whether I played that year or played any year, they owned my rights.
So
So,
not to interrupt you, so that they kind of had you kind of like a foreign player they do now, where they draft and almost like draft and stash. So if you went and played somewhere
right,
else, if you came back, you still had to play for Cleveland.
that's right. That's
Oh,
exactly
okay.
right. Yeah. So when I came out, went to Cleveland, they owned my rights. So even though I went there, played in their camp, played well, they had everybody under contract. They knew
Yeah.
that when they drafted me. I didn't know it, but they knew it. So I went overseas and played for about a half a year, and was able to work on my development at the same time. So it all worked out for the good.
I got to ask about that. So you went and played in Italy for a team called what? Let me see if I can get it right. Tiarama Arese.
Man, you did well. You did well.
That's
Um, you was
so
right there. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would have said Tiarima,
uh,
Tiarima Arese. So you was right there.
I Americanized it. There we go.
Yeah,
So
you
first,
westernized it.
what what um what was that experience like? Second, what was the toughest thing that you had to get used to playing over there? And then the third question I had for that was, had you been out of the country prior to playing in Italy?
Man, you can't hit me with too many questions at once, man.
I'll
You
tell you
can't
what,
do that.
after you finish the
I'm
first one,
old.
I'll re-ask you.
No, one of the toughest things right out of the gate was the language barrier.
Yeah,
I didn't know Italian.
yeah,
So I had to, and this is even off the court, let alone listening to a coach, but if I wanted to eat a certain food, I had to point to it and say, I want that because I couldn't relate.
yeah,
Now one of the assets I had was a guy named, I think his name was Floyd Allen. He was a veteran. He was American that played on that team as well. So he helped me out a lot. He mentored me a lot for the short time I was there. So I was grateful for that. But in terms of knowing what the coach was saying, that's where Floyd helped me. When the
yeah.
coach was cussing me out in Italian, I didn't know, so I was
He's like, oh,
good.
he's telling me good job. Thanks,
Yeah,
man.
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, yeah. What was the other
So
question?
had you been out of the country prior to that?
No, well, I take that back. I had been out of the country because when we played at Kentucky, I think every 4 years they would take an overseas trip, and I believe we had taken a trip to Japan, I think, one year. So that was the only time.
I bet that would have been cool. So what led you coming back to the CBA and playing for the Pensacola Tornadoes?
It was all a part of the plan of getting back to the NBA. I was having some contract disputes overseas in Italy. One of the things they'll do to you overseas, at least back then, was that if the team was losing, the people who got the blame were the American players. Now
Yeah.
there was only two American players on a team back during that time, so you made the most money on that team, so you got the blame. So when your team started to lose, they would stop paying you.
Wow.
Yeah. So once that happened, I said, man, I can't stay over here with this.
Yeah.
So I came back and played for the Pensacola Tornadoes and, continued to work on my development. And that led back to camp with the Cavaliers that summer and, locking in on a contract.
Yeah. So when you played in Italy, I know now, did they have a certain amount of American players that could play on a team
Too.
too? That's what
Yeah.
I figured. Because I
Yeah.
know
So
it's somewhat
myself
like
and
that
Floyd
now.
Allen. Yeah. It's still like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after that season, your NBA career finally began with the team that drafted you, the Cavs. So knowing that now, I mean, I guess they finally were like, all right, we're ready for you to come play now.
Yeah, obviously they had a spot or two that loosened up,
Mhm.
and they were also, I assume, pretty impressed with my development over the course of that time. I think they knew that they uh, wanted a glue guy in terms of a hustle guy that was going to do all the dirty work. That was me. That's what I was going to bring to the table. It was just a matter of finding a slot.
Absolutely. So you went to play. You went on to play for from the 1989 to 92 seasons with Cleveland, and in your final season, you all lost in the Eastern Conference Finals to Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. I got to ask, knowing that you played against him, do you have any good Michael Jordan stories?
And you probably know I've got the best Michael Jordan story of all time. Um, we were in the locker room one night, and coach goes to the board and starts to put these assignments on the board, and we're playing the Bulls. We're gonna play the Bulls at night, and he puts the assignments on the board. And he says, Brad Daugherty, I want you to guard Bill Cartwright. Larry Nance, you guard Horace Grant. Craig Elo, I want you to guard B.J. Armstrong. Well, there was only one guy left to guard. And coach had already told me, Winston, I'm going to start you tonight. And I was already blown away by that.
Yeah.
Little kid from Louisville, Kentucky, grew up with a dream. I didn't tell you this earlier, but my father, when I started out, used to roll up these two socks made like it was a ball and used to shoot it over a door in his room. I'm only yay high to a grasshopper. I would jump up and block the socks. That's how I game usually Louisville, playing on TV, because this is when I was very young. And he would say, Winston, can you see yourself being there one day? Not once, but every time a game came on, he would always pose the question, Winston, can you see it? Can you see yourself being there? Now, of course, at that early age, I didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah.
But he was infiltrating me or putting inside me a vision of where I wanted to go, of who I wanted to be. And also trying to encourage me and saying, yeah, you can be that. If you're willing to do what it takes to get there, you can get there. So I'm sorry, I digressed a little bit.
Oh, no, I'd love to hear stuff like that. I'd love to hear that stuff.
So we're in the locker room, coach putting up the assignments, and I knew there was only one guy left to guard. And by this time, man, I'm as nervous as I don't know what. And then he said it. Winston, you guard Michael Jordan. Well, man, I about fell out on the floor right then and there. Little kid from Louisville, Kentucky, grew up with a dream whose dad said, can you see it? Now all of a sudden I'm in the NBA guarding the world's greatest player. No one can tell me that dreams don't come true. If you work hard to acclaim them, you can make it happen. So, first half, we go into the game, and the game beginning, referee comes out, tosses up the ball. First play of the game, the ball goes to Jordan. Well, Jordan
who'd have thunk it?
Yeah, who'd have thunk it? Ball goes to Jordan. Jordan licks out that darn tongue. And he's got saliva coming all off his tongue. He's looking at me like I'm a baked potato and porterhouse roost Chris steak cooked, and he's about ready to cook me well done. Meanwhile, I'm down in my stance and I'm doing everything Joe B. Hall and Eddie Sutton taught me in college. I'm looking at the guy's belly button. I'm sliding, not crossing my feet, but sliding just right. Ball goes from Jordan to Pippen over to BJ, back out to Jordan. Jordan shoots a 15-footer. I jump as high as I can. Remember, I don't have a Griff's 48-inch vertical, but I do as best I can. He shoots it over my arms and nice follow through, elbow up, and you duck neck at the top, and he misses it. Ooh. Brad Daugherty gets the rebound, outlets it to Mark Price. Our fabulous three-point shooting Mark Price gets it over to Elo, but here I come streaking down the right wing. Hits me for about a 10-foot bank shot. I used to like that angle bank shot off the glass. You talk about guys not shooting the in-between. They don't use the backboard anymore either. So I love that. So this went on for about the first half. Man, I'm locking Jordan up. He's got 4 points. We roll into the locker room, man. I'm thinking we just won the NBA championship. Jordan's got 4 points. We up on him by about 10 or 12. Man, the Bulls were our nemesis. Little did I know that there was going to be a wind of change the second half. Yeah. The second half, we come back out. We drew up the same play as we did the first. We're going to get it into Big Brad. Brad catches. He liked to shoot the jump hook over the left shoulder, went with the jump hook. All of a sudden, we see this arm take the ball out of midair. It was Jordan. He didn't block it. He snatched it out of the air. And here he goes down the runway or down the court. And we all pursuing. Well, we had the highest jumper, one of the highest jumpers in the league back. His name is Larry Nance.
Larry Nance,
He dunked 2 basketballs. So he's waiting. So we got this guy, we got him Calypso. We're going to corral him. So he's going down. But you know, Jordan can take off from the free throw line. This cat takes wings. He takes off just inside the free throw line. Larry jumps, Jordan jumps. Me and some of the other guys are coming from behind. We didn't make it. He already done took flight. And as he got to his apex, bam, dunked it right on Larry Nance. We said, oh my God, that was nasty. Go back down. We go back, run our little play, man. We missed. Bulls get on a run. To shorten the thing up, man, Jordan got 65 points in the second half. He scored 69 for the game, the most he ever scored in an NBA game. It was unbelievable.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Did you just say he had 65 in the second half?
65 in the second half, Doc. And they still play that game today. You can catch that game sometimes on ESPN Classics. I'll generally get calls from all around the nation. Hey, you on? I see you on with Jordan.
So after that 92 season, you took a few years away from basketball. What did you do during that time before you went back and took an assistant coaching job under Coach Pitino?
Yeah, after the 92 season, number one, after playing for the Cavaliers, I had another knee injury. And I was making a comeback and was making that comeback with the Miami Heat. Kevin Lockery was the coach then, who was the same coach that coached Dr. J with the with the New Jersey Nets.
New Jersey Nets, yeah.
But in practice, I ended up injuring my knee again. That was the tale. That was it. So, I went on to retire after a short stint in a league that I played all my life to get to. Because of injuries, I didn't have that long, extenuating career that I wanted. So after that, I tried a number of things, but I tried banking. As I mentioned earlier, my mother was a stickler for education. So I had my degree, thought I'd try my hand at banking, but it just did not fulfill that love of the game that I had.
Yeah.
And that's when, I heard about Coach Pitino being at Kentucky and started reading about him and following him. And I remember he was going to be in Louisville at a Ballard game. So I purposed in my mind, wherever he was, I was going to try to show up to let him know, number one, I was interested if he had an opening on his staff, and number two, that nobody was going to outwork me. Okay, so I did that, and eventually he said yes, and I was able to be an assistant there.
So when did coaching kind of come into the picture for you? Was it when you were taking that time off banking and trying other things that you were like, hey, maybe this is something that I want to try to do to get myself back into the game?
Absolutely. I was looking and searching for ways to be involved in the game again. And I knew it could either be coaching or it could be announcing or play calling, being an analyst. But I really liked the development of young people. So I thought that, with my experience of being an ex-NBA ball player, being able to give those experiences I had as a collegiate athlete, that I might be able to pass that on to other players.
So during your time with the Kentucky Wildcats, you guys amassed a record of 69-7. You guys won the national championship in '96. You guys were the runner-up in '97. And then you left, obviously went to Boston, which we'll talk about here in a second. But what would you say you learned the most in your time at UK that you kind of used in the future when you were a head coach?
Yeah, everything I did as a head coach came from Coach Pitino mostly. Whenever we do anything, we're generally borrowing from people whose shoulders that we now stand on. And certainly, I give him the utmost credit. He's an X and O's genius. He's a mastermind at psychology and motivation. So give him all the credit for whatever success I enjoyed as a coach. And let me say too, I am so grateful and so thankful to see him back where he belongs in the collegiate game, mentoring young people. Had a great year at Iona.
Yeah.
But the things I learned from him, one, the tenacity it takes to be successful. Obviously, the work ethic has to be second to none. He used to have a saying that you got to be poor, hungry, and driven. You got to have your PhD. Standing for poor, hungry, and driven. Not poor as in economically poor, but poor in spirit, pour in humility, willing to do anything, willing to sweep the floors of the court before the players practice, willing to go in and clean up the weight room, whatever it takes, you're willing to do it. And then, of course, your hunger. Your hunger's got to be second to none. And then your drive has got to be second to none as well.
So after that, you guys, you and Coach Pitino, and I'm not sure if anybody else followed, but you guys left and went to Boston. How exciting was it to be back in the pro game, even if it wasn't playing, just coaching?
Man, it was a dream come true, man, because I always thought that, man, my NBA career was so short. You work years and years and years to get to a certain level and hope for longevity, hope you're able to, really stack it and build for retirement while you're there and you love what you're doing. How many times do you actually get to do what you love as a career, as a vocation? There's not many people can say they actually do what they love. A lot of us do what we have to do because we got to put bread on the table, baby needs shoes, so forth and so on. But when you get to do what you love, man, oh man, what a great feeling.
So after your short stint in the NBA, you came back and you coached at Kentucky State. How great was it to finally get a head coaching job and to not only do that, but to win a conference championship in your first season?
Man, that was the most from coast to coast, if you will. It was everything because I was able to take some young guys. I was put in a great position. One, Derek Ramsey, who was a former all-star football player, one of the first blacks to play quarterback at UK. He was the athletic director there, and he brought me in and gave me an opportunity. And, we were able to win the championship for him and for the school. Little known fact, that was the first championship Kentucky State had won since they had been a Division II champion. They had great success as a Division II school. I mean, as an NAIA Division II school, but never on the NCAA Division II level had they won anything of any magnitude, and that was the first time. So I'm grateful for that, to be able to trailblaze that path. But it wasn't me; it was the young people that played for me, that had a hunger, had that poor, hungry, and driven attitude. People like Jamal Jackson, who is the head coach there now, was my assistant. He's coaching them now. But my players, the guy we had by the name of Big J, played the center for us, would have reminded you of Nazr Mohammed when Kentucky first got him. He was overweight. Big Nas was over 300 and some pounds. Big J was over 300 and some pounds. But both of them had similar attitudes, that they were willing to do whatever it took to get better, to get the weight off, to get into playing shape. Big J, if you had first saw him, you would have said, man, you belong on a football field somewhere over top of somebody's center.
Yeah.
But that guy made himself a player, man. He made himself a player. And then we had guys like Mike Dupree, who played guard for us, that got after people defensively. A guy that we call Red, Hutchison. This guy, man, was just like an Anthony Epps, very cerebral, get people in their places. He was a leader. Just great, man. I just had some great guys, man. Great guys.
Speaking of Nazr Mohammed, this is a side question here. You coaching all those guys that you did with all that talent, would you have ever expected that Nazr Mohammed would have had the longest career out of all of those guys?
Honestly, no, I wouldn't have expected. But on the same side, I knew this guy had something that a lot of players didn't have. While he didn't have a whole lot of natural skill, ability, although he was very skilled for his size, what he had was heart. What he had is a willingness to do what needed to be done. The thing about Nazr is, we would have to be at the gym at 6 a.m. as coaches, to get ready for early morning practice. When I would come in, Nazr was already on the Stairmaster, trying to get the weight off. Had a pool of sweat just laying there because he had worked so hard before practice, trying to get the weight off. That told me something about Nazr Mohammed and about his hunger to be great. Now, Nazr was pushed a lot by a guy by the name of Antoine Walker.
Yeah.
They both came from Chicago. After Antoine left the 96 team and went on and got drafted in the NBA, that probably was the biggest motivation for Nas, because he saw how well Antoine had done. And he knew with his size of being 6'10, 6'11, that if anything else, NBA like size, he had skill, he had soft hands, that he could make himself a journeyman if he put in the work, which we know he did.
Yeah. So after your time at Kentucky State, were you looking to get out of coaching? Were you just taking some time away from the game, or what were your plans after you left Kentucky State?
Okay, I'm gonna mention this because I know you wanted to talk about it, so I'm gonna mention it.
I don't want to talk about it unless you want
Okay,
to.
okay, okay, great.
No, I
After,
don't. I don't want to talk about it unless you want to. If you
okay,
feel
gotcha.
comfortable and want to, then cool. But no, I don't want to talk about it.
I feel comfortable. I feel
Okay.
comfortable, and I'll just mention this. Before leaving Kentucky State, of course, I got into a fight with one of my players. One of my players was a Division I transfer, and the only issue with that is anytime you get a Division I transfer that drops down, there is an entitlement that they feel like they have, that they're better than everyone else. And I took that for a very long time, and my players felt like I let him get away with a lot more. I didn't let him get away because I would run him to death, but he would come back and make more mistakes. But the negative was we were in practice and one of my guys came down on the dribble. It actually was him. He came down on the dribble, thought he was fouled, and I would intentionally tell my coaches not to call fouls to prepare us for playing
Toughen them up.
games,
Yeah, toughen them
toughen
up.
them up, toughen
Yeah.
them up. So he took an attitude about it. So when the ball switched hands, he didn't get back on defense. So when it came back, he took the ball and threw it at one of his teammates because the other teammates stepped in and tried to draw a charge on him. But I'd had about enough, man. We'd went through so much. I had forgiven him for so much that he had done just to keep him there. And I just lost him. We got into an entanglement and fighting, and me being the coach, the buck stops with me. You don't ever put your hands on a player, which I did. So we had an interim president at the time who was trying to win the presidency. So anything that was coming to his desk that looked negative, he
Yeah.
was, taking a sword to it and chopping off necks. So that happened, and as I we're left with just like example and grow from it.
Well, I appreciate you talking about that because I know that's not an easy thing to
Yeah,
talk
man.
about. And like I said, I didn't.
Yeah,
If you wanted to talk about it, I wasn't going to bring it back up. But
right.
thank you for
I
sharing that.
know you had that. That's my pleasure, and I know the way that we grow as people. Sometimes we have to give our testimony of not only the good, but most of us grow from negative experiences, either our own or from something negative someone else has gone through, in hopes that we grow. So hopefully one of your listeners may grow from it. You never know, but there it is.
So did that take you away from the game a little bit? Just take some time away and what was that
Absolutely.
coaching? Was that coaching bug still in you though? I mean, because obviously it was because you came back in 2007 and took the job at Mid Continent. But I guess during that time, was it just like, hey, I'm going to take this certain amount of time off, or was it you didn't really have a choice?
I think number one, anytime you have an experience that you deem to be negative, a negative consequence, you sort of sour a little bit.
Yeah,
So I soured on the game for a while. Didn't know if I wanted to do it anymore. I felt like that um, young people were changing. I grew up under the old school where it was nothing for you to get yanked up. Not necessarily that they're gonna punch you out, but
yeah,
they'll grab you by the and yank you up.
yeah,
So I grew up in that style. As I mentioned, Bobby Knight recruited me.
yeah.
So I soured for a while, but you know, time is the great healer. It's said that time is a healer of all wounds. And after I had time to think about it, time to reflect, time to grow from that incident, I knew that I still wanted to mentor young people. I knew I still had a lot to give from a coaching standpoint. And that's when I was able to get back in the market, start looking at opportunities, and the Mid-Continent thing came up.
How great did it feel to get that job at Mid-Continent and just get back into the
Man,
game?
it was awesome, man. And the great thing about it, it was in the middle of nowhere. I didn't even know, hadn't even heard of Mayfield, Kentucky. Didn't even know where that was.
Yeah.
But here is the weird thing about it. Generally, after anything negative has happened, me and my family take a trip. We had taken a trip to Destin, Florida, just before I got that job, and we were on the beach. It had rained the whole time. And this one particular day, the sun popped out. So my son goes down and reserves, or I went down to reserve a store. And we come down with our chairs and everything, a player that I used to like. And I said, really? Who's that? Well, a guy named Winston Bennett. I said, really? I look like him? She said, yeah, you do. And I said, well, I am him. Oh, you're him? Yeah, I'm him. And we got into a conversation, and I said, I'm just curious, where are you from? Since you're a Kentucky fan, you got to be from somewhere in Kentucky. She said, I am. I'm from Mayfield, Kentucky. I said, what? I just interviewed for a job there, just before coming on this trip, job at Mid-Continent University. She said, oh, man, that's a great school. That is a great school. So I felt like going through that experience was God saying, okay, here's an opportunity, take a chance. It was almost like the Bible story of Abraham going into a land that he didn't know where he was going, just going on faith. That was kind of what I did. Went on faith. This school had nothing in terms of basketball facilities, didn't have his own gym. They had turf in the facility that eventually became a gym for us. We actually played at a high school gym before that. So it had nothing. So you go from playing at Kentucky, coaching at Kentucky, coaching with the Boston Celtics, where you had everything, to having nothing. It was a humbling experience, but one I would never forget because of the people that I worked with.
So you coached there from 2007 to 2013, which is when you resigned. Were you aware of the school's plan to close its doors when you resigned?
Man, the only thing I knew was the school was getting rid of a lot of people. We didn't know why.
Yeah.
And we didn't know why, we were kind of the last man standing. But we soon found out why when it broke on the news that the school had come down under financial problems. So, those things happening at the top that, small schools, man, crazy stuff happens. So, that was it.
So what are you doing now? Do you have any plans of maybe trying to get back into coaching, or you think that ship has sailed?
Well, I'm in the mortgage business now with a company called AmeriSave Mortgage. My son has been there for 15 years. He recruited me to become a mortgage banker. So I am there, helping people with their purchases and their refinances. I love the game of basketball. At this late stage in life, will I do it again? It would have to be God, man. It would have to be the right opportunity because it takes a toll anytime you have to move a family around and pick up and move again. Although my kids are now grown, except for one that I still have in the house, but the rest are grown. I don't know. It would have to be a God ordained thing, and it'd have to be like that situation in Destin where the lady comes out from under the umbrella.
I'm gonna have to follow you around and when you go on vacation and just try to get you back into coaching. All right, so I got one more question, and this is a question that I feel like is great for you because Kentucky State, for those of you that don't know, is a historically black college, HBCU for short.
Right.
And recently, I would say in the past couple of years, you've had a lot of attention going towards those with some top players going there. In football, you have Deion Sanders and his son. Deion Sanders going to coach and his son coming to play for him. I have to ask, first off, you being an African American and you coaching at an HBCU, what's your thoughts on the resurgence of top players choosing to go to some of those HBCUs? And how do you think that bodes for the future? Do you think this is something that's going to last for a while, or do you think this is something that maybe is just for the time?
Well, I think with the social unrest in our nation, and when you think about most of the, I guess I would say, stars that play on the collegiate ranks, most of them are black. I mean, let's just be very honest.
Absolutely, yeah.
There had not been a whole lot of light shown on historically black colleges since the early 70s when the machine gun Travis Grants played at Kentucky State and some of those great players who went to historically black colleges. But now, because of the social unrest, now you're starting to see it. You're starting to see, some of the athletes who have been that I didn't know went to historically black colleges. You're starting to see them pop up. So that's a good thing. I think it's something that will continue to grow. I really do. And I think the more you see stories about what has happened in the past with these great players that have gone there, and now you're going to see other great minority players, black players, what have we, that's going to start going back through those doors. And why wouldn't they? They start to see more people that look like them. And we need to see that. It's no disgrace from any other race or anything, but it's just sometimes you need to see someone who looks like you that can tell you I can, that can encourage you, that knows what you're going through, that know where you come from because they've been there themselves and can help, smooth the rough spots in life, which we all have. We need mentors, we need leaders, we need teachers, we need pastors, no matter where you get them from, but oftentimes you need them from people that look like you, that can relate to you.
Absolutely. So this is the last part here. Are you familiar with rapid fire questions? How rapid fire questions work?
It sounds like they're going to come fast and
So I'm
furious.
gonna give it to you. You say the first thing that comes to mind. So
All right.
my rapid fire questions are, I call them the Mike and Cheese rapid fire questions. That's my sponsor. Mike and Cheese is the best macaroni and cheese in town. One of my good friends has a mac and cheese truck. I'll have to get you the number for it because I'm telling you,
Man, my daughter loves mac and cheese.
I have my own mac and cheese with it.
Do
I
you
have,
really?
I do. It's like I said, he's like a younger brother to me. They do free delivery to Louisville and Southern Indiana, but it's a $15 minimum. They have trays that start at $10. They'll feed a good amount of people. Call them at 502-548-6845 and make sure to try the beef pizza mac and tell them I sent you.
Wow. Okay.
It's a pizza mac and cheese. It's
Pizza mac and cheese.
pepperoni and sausage with some mozzarella and American cheese in there. He's got some great flavors in there, and he does a food truck as well, and he sets up at different places. So
Wow.
if you're on Facebook, I'll get you his page, and he'll tell you where he's setting up and all that stuff, and you'll be able to contact him.
All right.
All right, you ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. So favorite pregame meal as a player?
Oh, steak.
Pizza or tacos?
Pizza.
Wings or burgers?
Wings.
All right. If you're choosing wings, drums or flats?
Drums.
All right. This is a big one for me, and this may decide our friendship on this one. I'll let you know. French fries or tater tots?
Oh, French fries.
Thank you. I'm glad you said it like that too.
Yeah.
I get some people
French
like, "Oh yeah, tater tots."
No, man, I'm burger and
French
fries, man. Burger and fries.
All right. Favorite movie?
Gosh. Favorite movie, Coming to America.
Oh, I haven't watched the second one yet. Have you watched the second one?
I have. It's nothing like the first, and they always says, when a second one of anything comes out, it's nothing like the original. Yeah. And I would have to agree. I like it. It's good.
Nostalgia.
It's okay. Yeah, but it's nothing like the first one, man, with the barbershop scenes and oh man, I love that first one.
Yeah, that boy good. I love
right.
All right. Favorite musical artist all time and currently?
Michael Jackson.
I can't go wrong with Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
What's your favorite album of all time?
Off the Wall. Michael Jackson.
All right, here's a good one. What's your biggest fear?
Not making it to heaven.
Favorite flavor of ice cream?
Pecan.
Favorite restaurant in the city of Louisville?
Oh, man, that's a tough one. Favorite restaurant in the city of Louisville? Man, you got me on that one, man. I'm just gonna have to pick a restaurant. This is not my favorite, but it's just what comes to mind right now. Ruth Chris.
Ruth Chris. All right. Favorite basketball and football player ever?
Uh, Jordan on basketball player. O.J. Simpson on football player.
Who's your favorite athlete ever?
Muhammad Ali.
That's
Without a doubt.
every person that I have interviewed from the city of Louisville has said the same thing, and I don't
Oh man,
I don't disagree with it.
he's the greatest.
Yes.
He's the greatest, man.
All right, I got two more questions for you. The best player you ever faced in high school, college, and what I'm going to say professionally outside of Michael Jordan, because that's a given that's the best you played in the NBA. So who's the best player you played in high school,
okay,
college, and then professional outside of Michael Jordan?
Okay, best player played against in high school. I'll go ahead and give that to Dwayne Pearl of Washington, who came out of New York, played for Syracuse. They called him the Pearl. I'll go ahead and give that to him. Best player in college, I'll give that to Barkley since I played against him. And then best player in the pros, aside from Jordan, man, that's a toss-up between Bird and Magic.
So I have to ask this because I know we're almost done. But was there, when you got on the court with those guys, was there ever an awe factor for a little bit?
Of course. I felt like I was on a lonely island. First of all,
yeah.
I mean, Bird was so big, man. He was 6'9", 6'10", and he had that jumper, man. You wasn't gonna block it, you wasn't gonna alter it, and he was so conniving. I remember one time, I'm guarding him. He goes down off a screen and he tells the chief, said, "Chief, get him." So immediately I jumped to Chief's side, knowing he's ready to go off the side of the pick with Chief. Well, he didn't go off of Chief's side. He went off of McHale's side, came right off for a three, bang him, and he would tell you he's gonna do something before he gonna do it. He'd tell you, say, "Winston, how you want these next ones? How you want them?" and then go give it to you. He'll give it to you. Oh man! And then come on, man, Garden Magic. Come on, man. This cat throwing balls across your ear, and I mean hitting worthy. Oh man, big cap, big Kareem with the sky hook, man. I'm playing against them guys every night at the small forward. I was a defensive player. I'm playing small forward, but I would have to guard the other team's best player. So I'm matching up against Dominique Wilkins one night, Barkley the next night, Alex English for the Denver Nuggets the next night. I mean, it was just crazy, man. It was an unbelievable experience.
All right, so this is the last question I got for you. So
how many last questions do you got, Brandon?
No, I got a couple more questions to be fair, but this is the last question.
No, I'm just kidding, man. Make it happen. I don't care.
All right, who's the best player you coached against in college and in the NBA?
The best player I coached against in college. Man, that's a tough one. I'm gonna say as an assistant coach. Yeah. When I was on the Kentucky staff, we coached against Marcus Camby when he was at UMass.
He was a bad man.
He was a beast. He was a beast. Even though we won the '96 championship and all that, man, that cat was a beast.
Like I said, I've grown up a Louisville fan, but I'm a bigger basketball fan than I am anything. So I love those teams back in the day. And as a Louisville fan, I have been on record, and I will say it again, that 96 team to me is the greatest team that's ever played in college basketball. I know the undefeated UCLA teams, you have the UNLV team and stuff like that. I still think that team is the most talented team to ever play basketball. I still remember those games. I remember you guys losing to UMass early in the season and then beating them again. And also I remember the game you all losing to Mississippi State in the SEC championship with a few of those guys.
Right. And I think that SEC loss to Mississippi State was a planned loss. And what I mean by that was we had so much success and guys' heads had gotten so big that going into the big tournament, we might needed to take a loss. And, Coach was a mastermind and stuff like that, and it was the thing that got those guys hungry again, re-energized them, because they was kind of living in a fantasy world, thinking that they the world's greatest team, like you just said. And they had a tremendous amount of talent and great people, great guys, but they needed to take a loss going into the NCAA tournament.
So who's the best player you coached against in the NBA?
Oh man, that's Jordan. I mean, well, I didn't coach against Jordan in the NBA,
Well,
so
I mean,
I'll take
you
it.
were assistant as well, so I mean that's
Yeah, yeah. When I was coaching with the Celtics, yeah, I mean it would still be Jordan, absolutely. Yeah, still be Jordan.
well, Winston. I appreciate you taking time out for me. I'm sorry I went over a little bit of the time that we said, but I appreciate you taking so much time out for me and
Man,
answering those questions.
you made it fun, man. I really thank you for inviting me on. This was fun, so I appreciate that.
Maybe me, you, and Ryan can get together for dinner one day, and we'll get to meet face to face or something.
Man,
So
that
you
would
still
be a
live in the
treat.
Louisville area?
Yeah, yeah, that'd be a treat. I would enjoy that for sure.
Absolutely. Well, Winston, I appreciate again you taking some time out for me. I'm excited for people to hear this, especially the Jordan and the Bird stories. Those are some good stuff. And
Classics. Those are
yes,
classics, man.
um,
Classics.
but I appreciate you so much, and I had a great time too, and I'm glad that you had a good time because it's always good to think back on memories of good times in sports and in life and everything. So
For
I
sure.
appreciate you letting me be a part of it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Appreciate
All
it.
right, I'll talk to you later, man.
Okay. Thank you. Bye bye.